Thank you for joining us this evening. I am Dr. John Palm, District Superintendent. Tonight, we will discuss the upcoming bond election on February 11, 2025, and facilitate a panel discussion to answer your questions. As a reminder, the state of Washington does not provide funding for the construction of new schools or other district facilities. This evening, we aim to provide you with facts and information to ensure you're well informed. Each voice in our community plays a crucial role. Your participation in this decision-making process helps shape the future of education for our children. So your attendance is greatly appreciated. Please welcome Dr. Vincent Pecchia, Assistant Superintendent of Operations and School Support, who will introduce our presenters and start the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Palm. This evening, I'm joined by my colleagues, Brady Martin, Director of Capital Projects, Ryan Hahn, Executive Director of Business Services, and Sarah Gillespie, Executive Director of Communications. We have an informative session planned, starting with some quick facts about our district. We'll then watch a bond informational video, followed by a discussion on the committee's work and our facilities needs. Next, we'll cover the 7 bond projects and state match projects. We'll provide important tax information and address the challenges we face. We'll also discuss what happens if we don't secure this funding and how you can help. Finally, we'll have a question and answer session with more details about it to be shared shortly. We appreciate your attention and participation, so let's go ahead and get started. So, this virtual event is formatted as a Zoom webinar with a private chat feature enabled for moderators only. This means that not everyone can see the chat. This is done intentionally to keep the focus on what is being presented. At any time during this presentation, please submit your questions you have. At the end of the presentation, a panel discussion will be facilitated by Executive Director of Communications, Sarah Gillespie. She will read out loud the questions received and ask for a panelist to answer. At the end of the panel discussion, if your question is not addressed, please include your email address so our staff can follow up with you. So some quick facts about our district. So we were founded in 1854. We are proud to be the 6th largest school district in Washington. Our nearly 4,100 staff members are dedicated to serving 23,110 students across 34 schools. Our district encompasses approximately 145,542 residents, including the communities of Edgewood, Puyallup, South Hill, parts of Fife, and unincorporated areas of Pierce County. We are honored to have been ranked the #1 school district on Forbes' list of America's best employers by state in 2022. So to start things off, here's a brief video that highlights the necessity of this bond measure.
On February 11th, 2025, Puyallup School District voters will consider an $800 million bond to fund major construction and infrastructure improvements at 7 neighborhood schools. Specifically, the bond proposal focuses on addressing overcrowding, aging facilities, and accommodating enrollment growth. If approved, the bond would maintain the current tax rate of $4.14 per $1,000 of assessed property value. Funding would be supported through a capital levy rollback, with the bond extending over 21 years from 2025 to 2046. Increased population growth in areas such as Edgewood on North Hill and in the Sunrise area has contributed to rising student enrollment and capacity challenges in schools across the district. The bond proposal includes additions to Emerald Ridge, Puyallup, and Rogers High Schools, replacements for Spinning, Waller Road, and Mountain View elementary schools, and construction of a new elementary school in the Sunrise area. Current enrollment trends highlight the need for additional classroom space to address capacity challenges. Some of the district's oldest buildings, including Spinning, Waller Road, and Mountain View Elementary, are nearing the end of their functional lifespan, with building condition scores rated as poor. Issues such as leaky roofs, outdated plumbing, and failing HVAC systems highlight the need for replacement. Replacing these schools would provide safe, modern facilities designed to support student learning and well-being. Maintaining a steady tax rate ensures these projects remain financially manageable for the community. The $800 million bond proposal would maintain the current tax rate of $4.14 per $1,000 of assessed property value through a $130 million capital levy rollback. The proposal includes a 10% contingency to manage costs and ensure projects are completed as planned. Additionally, the district could potentially secure approximately $152.9 million in state matching funds, which are collected as projects near 90% completion. On February 11, 2025, voters will decide on a bond proposal to fund major construction at 7 neighborhood schools with no tax rate increase. To learn more about Proposition 1, visit www.puyallupsd.org/bond.
So the Bond Advisory Committee's work utilized multiple reports and data sources developed over the past 5 years. In 2021, the board adopted the Citizens Facility Advisory Committee, or often referred to as CFAC, which provided a comprehensive review of district assets, including life cycle projects and major capital improvements needed over the next 12 years. The CFAC report's prioritized list of major capital projects served as the baseline for the Bond Advisory Committee. Additionally, related reports, such as the district's capital facilities plan and the study and survey report, were instrumental. The study and survey report was crucial in identifying life cycle projects included in the 2024 capital levy, which voters approved February 2024. In the upcoming slides about the bond projects, except for the new elementary school, you will notice a number in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. This number is a building condition score determined by the study and survey, rated on a scale of 1 to 100. Any score below 60 indicates poor facility condition. As you will learn from this presentation, our district has a significant need to address aging schools. So the Bond Advisory Committee initially reviewed a list of projects totaling over $1.26 billion in need. Through their efforts, the Bond Advisory Committee refined this list to focus on the most critical projects that would address growth, enhance safety, and reduce the reliance on portable classrooms. Ryan Hahn and Brady Martin will now provide facts and information on each bond, but before they do that, I'm going to share with you a little bit about the fact that bonds build schools. So the 2025 bond proposal includes 7 major capital projects. Emerald Ridge High School, Rogers High School, and Puyallup High School will all have building expansions to increase its permanent capacity. 3 elementary schools will be replaced, including Mountain View, Waller Road, and Spinning. And a new elementary will be built on vacant district property uphill from Emerald Ridge High School to serve the highest growth region in our district. Brady will provide a brief overview of each project in the upcoming slides, accompanied by videos that highlight the significance of this bond measure.
Emerald Ridge High School received a building condition score of 64, classifying it as fair. To address overcrowding and reduce the reliance on portable classrooms, the school will undergo an expansion and improvement. This includes constructing a modern 2-story addition with classrooms to increase the school's capacity to accommodate up to 1,800 students. Supporting the projected growth, future growth of the site. We ask our staff and students to share their thoughts on this proposed project. Let's start by hearing from them in this first video.
Emerald Ridge High School, a hub of achievement and opportunity for students in our district, opened in 2000 as the district's 3rd comprehensive high school. Emerald Ridge has seen remarkable growth, especially with the expansion of the Sunrise Master Plan, which has brought thousands of new homes and students to Puyallup School District. As enrollment continues to rise and more growth is on the horizon, the need for more space is more urgent than ever.
As a senior here at Emerald Ridge, I've seen the overcrowding firsthand. The classrooms are often full and we don't have enough space to move around, so it's tough to focus.
A planned addition to the school will help alleviate these challenges, providing more permanent classroom space and reducing reliance on portables, with improved learning environments for every student.
We can see all the different housing communities that are being built in the area, and we can see what that means for new families coming and the new space that we're going to need here at Emerald Ridge. One thing we're really looking forward to with this potential expansion also is bringing our students out of portables and into a main building. We know that in our community, security is a huge concern for a lot of our families.
If you can, register to vote because your voice matters and we want to hear it.
Rogers High School received a building condition score of 65%, which classifies it as fair. The score represents the average condition of all buildings. Rogers High School will be expanded and improved to alleviate overcrowding and minimize reliance on portable classrooms. The project includes constructing a 2-story building addition that will provide additional student classrooms to meet current enrollment demands and projected growth. The building additions will provide connectivity between existing buildings, enhancing safety and security. The expansion will increase the school's capacity to accommodate up to 1,800 students, ensuring a more functional and supportive learning environment. Now, let's hear another perspective in this next video.
Rogers High School has been an integral part of the Puyallup community since it opened in 1968. While the school has undergone several classroom upgrades over the years, it has never experienced a full modernization. Overcrowded classrooms, deteriorating infrastructure, and limited access to modern technology hinder the school's ability to provide students with the best learning environments possible.
With thousands of students, this bond would allow us to get out of portables and create classrooms for every single student. And to me and to our families and our communities, that's very, very important.
We are one of the most open campuses here at Rogers High School, so being able to remove the portables and actually have students in the building is not only going to help with our safety, which we know in our society is a very big deal, especially with schools. It is going to be able to allow our students not to have to go in the rain, not to possibly go in the snow, in the wind, going from classroom to classroom. It means they will actually have closer access to things like bathrooms, which can take a lot of time away if they have to move all the way from the portable to get into the building and back.
From an instructional standpoint, really having students in up-to-date modern classrooms is better for their academic achievement, which is what we are all about.
Puyallup High School received a building condition score of 57, which classifies it as poor. This score represents the average condition of all buildings. Puyallup High School will undergo significant expansion and improvements to address overcrowding and reduce dependence on portable classrooms. Plans include constructing a modern 3-story building to replace the closed library, science, and art building, creating additional classrooms designed to accommodate current enrollment and projected growth while meeting the district's educational standards for science, chemistry, biology, and art. Additionally, the project will complete Phase 2 of the Career and Technical Education Building, known as the CTE building on campus, by adding a 2nd and 3rd floor classrooms, further enhancing learning opportunities and supporting the school's growing needs. The PHS expansion will increase the permanent student capacity from approximately 1,260 students without portables to an 1,800 student capacity school. Each voice adds something unique. Let's now continue with another perspective.
We have an upcoming bond and just want to highlight a couple things that really could use some looking at and would be on the bond in February, and that would include our chemistry labs. They're using shared space right now, and it's not up to par with what other facilities in the area and other school districts have, and our students could really use those updated facilities.
In chemistry, we didn't have a lab, which made it really hard to do very much in chemistry. And even in physics, we got moved to a new classroom, so we didn't have much space to do physical labs and things. It wasn't as fun, and it wasn't as interactive as I hoped it would be.
Most recently, we had to close our library science building, which has forced us to move several classrooms, a library, and chemistry labs into our main building. And right now, our students that are at a significant disadvantage.
I think it's really important for students to have up-to-date classroom spaces to help them learn and grow better. With the bond, students will be able to have classroom spaces that are expanded and modern and equal to what other students in the district have.
I know that there are a lot of students that want to have a say in this, so if you're 16 or 17, you can pre-register and vote February 11th.
Mountain View Elementary School received a building condition score of 40%, classifying it as poor. This score represents the average condition of all buildings. Mountain View Elementary will be replaced and expanded to address its aging and failing infrastructure, ensuring a safe and secure learning environment for students. The project will expand the school's facilities to accommodate current enrollment and projected growth, effectively reducing overcrowding. Updated modern buildings will enhance safety and security, while site parking and traffic circulation improvements will create a more efficient and accessible campus for students, staff, and families. The replacement building for Mountain View Elementary will be more than double today's permanent capacity from approximately 250 students to 550 student capacity. The North Hill area is one of the high growth centers in the district, and the Mountain View expansion will alleviate current and projected overcrowding at both Mountain View and Northwood Elementary. This video provides additional information from Mountain View staff.
Mountain View Elementary is feeling the strain of the growth here on the North Hill, but we don't have the infrastructure any longer to support it. Originally, these were all separate buildings, and there was a little bit of a remodel in the past to connect those buildings, but we still have a feel of really separation of different wings around the building. Really, we also don't have the infrastructure of technology that many of our newer buildings have as well.
I went to school here, my kids went to school here, and I've been teaching here for quite a while, and not much has changed at Mountain View. Our outdated building here at Mountain View makes it really difficult to implement new teaching methods.
We have 6 different portable classrooms that house students at this time. Really makes it tricky for students as they navigate their way around the building on a tight schedule. We also have to eat lunch in our classrooms. We don't have a cafeteria space, and so that adds a little bit of extra strain on those classrooms as well. A new building would not only be able to support the additional growth here up on the North Hill, but it would also provide that perfect learning environment for our students while also being able to support the growth at Northwood Elementary.
Spinning Elementary School received a building condition score of 40%, classifying it also in poor condition. Spinning Elementary will be replaced and expanded to address its aging and failing infrastructure, ensuring a safe and secure learning environment for students. The project will expand the school's facilities to accommodate current enrollment and projected growth, effectively reducing overcrowding. Updated modern buildings will enhance safety and security, while site parking and traffic circulation improvements will create a more efficient and accessible campus for students, staff, and families. The replacement building for Spinning will be sized to reduce the need for portables, not only at Spinning, but at surrounding elementary schools like Meeker, Stewart, and potentially Shaw Road Elementary. Here's some additional information that Spinning staff would like to share.
Love our school, I love our community, but I feel like we definitely could do better for our students and our staff. Our building is rated out of all the buildings in Puyallup the worst in terms of building conditions. So although we try and the district tries very hard to make the repairs that are needed, it's getting to the point where it's beyond repairs. We need a new building for the safety and security of our students.
There are some difficult conditions as far as the heating goes in our classrooms. Last year, if I turned the heat up, we'd open windows and then it turned the heat up a little bit higher. So we had tired students that were it was hard for them to focus.
In the winter, we are wearing coats and mittens a lot of days because the vents do not work consistently. The first couple weeks of school, we get to have big conversations with 5-year-olds about the train that passes by, the vibrations that it causes.
Right when I'm ready to deliver a lesson, here comes the train. So we pause, it's loud, it's very loud. So then we shut the windows again and then the room gets overheated.
I invite you to register to vote. Your vote is so important.
Waller Road Elementary School has a building condition score of 40%, classifying it as poor. Waller Road Elementary will be replaced and expanded to address its aging and failing infrastructure, ensuring a safe and secure learning environment for students. The project will expand the school's facilities to accommodate current enrollment and projected growth, effectively reducing overcrowding. Updated modern buildings will enhance safety and security, while site parking and traffic circulation improvements will create a more efficient and accessible campus for students, staff, and families. The replacement building for Waller Road will increase its permanent capacity from approximately 240 students to 400 students, eliminating the need for portables and accommodating modest enrollment increase. Each story paints a clear picture of what this bond measure means to our community. Let's hear from the Waller Road Elementary.
Waller Road was built in 1936. It's an old building. It was remodeled last in the 1980s, so we get a lot of problems with some of the building infrastructure, the pipes, the electrical, all of those things. It's a lot of repairs, it's constant breakdowns. It's something that we are used to kind of dealing with on a regular basis.
We are in dire, desperate need for an upgrade. We've had some great upgrades that the district has provided for us, but again, we are a very, very struggling school with heating, ventilation, air conditioning, water quality, electricity, parking, safety. We just need a complete upgrade here at Waller Road.
We do have our drop-off and pickup on our blacktop, which is unique to our school. It's because we live on a very busy road out here on Waller Road. And so the traffic, in order to alleviate the traffic being backed up and creating a safe place, we are having our parents drive onto our blacktop.
So we would appreciate you getting out there to vote, and thank you for your time.
Lastly, Proposition 1 will provide us with the ability to construct a new elementary school in the southeast region of the district. This new elementary will reside on previously owned district land that is located just above Emerald Ridge High School and Glacier View Junior High to address projected growth and enrollment in the Sunrise Master Plan area. This new school will reduce overcrowding in neighborhood elementary schools that include Edgerton, Hope, and Hunt Elementary, providing students with a more comfortable and supportive learning environment. I will now turn it over to Vince, who will share information on potential state match funds.
Thank you, Brady. In addition to funding received from the bond, we estimate the district has the potential of collecting up to $152.9 million of state match dollars. This estimate is based on the total eligibility of the 7 bond projects, as driven by the state's match formulas for new construction and modernization of existing buildings. State match dollars based on a particular project cannot be collected until the project has reached 90% completion. The typical process is for the school board to charter a bond oversight committee after the passage of a bond to recommend the allocation of state match funds. This list of projects that you see on your screen includes some of the higher priority projects as identified by previous committees that could potentially that could potentially receive additional funding. And now our Executive Director of Business Services will talk about maintaining a steady tax rate.
Thank you, Vince. Good evening. We aim to maintain a steady tax rate over the next 21 years for homeowners, regardless of property value fluctuations. Proposition 1 would extend the voter-approved rate from February through the life of the bond. The proposed $800 million school improvement bond would be collected over a 21-year period. The tax rate would remain consistent with the 2024 voter-approved rate, which includes the Educational Programs and Operating EP&O levy, the capital levy, and the bond. The $36.25 per month calculation represents the increase in the taxes due to the voter-approved 2024 capital levy, which is projected to raise the total cumulative tax rate from $3.27 to $4.14 per thousand of assessed value in 2025. The increase of 87 cents per $1,000 calculates to approximately $36.25 per month for a home valued at $500,000. I'll turn it back over to Vince.
Thank you, Ryan. So the challenge. So bonds require a supermajority vote, meaning 60% plus one. Bonds also have a voter validation requirement. That means that for the special election on February 11th, there is a 40% voter validation requirement that needs to be met. This validation is based on the number of ballots returned during the most recent general election on November 5th within our district. Achieving this will be a significant challenge as historical data shows that February special elections typically see around 24,000 to 25,000 ballots returned out of 91,400 registered voters. To meet the 40% validation threshold, we will need a minimum of 28,260 ballots returned. And that's why it's so important to register to vote if you're not already registered. So what happens without this funding? This is a question that comes up a lot. So running a bond measure in February 2025 will maintain the 2024 voter-approved $4.14 tax rate for the next 21 years, providing stability and predictability for our community. Additionally, the state match funds will be based on our higher pre-pandemic 2019 enrollment numbers, which means we can maximize the bond's value. The levy rollback will accelerate the life cycle improvement projects by making funds available sooner. If we wait, future bond measures will require advertising a tax rate increase, potentially impacting voter approval. Running an educational programs and operations replacement levy in February 2026 could create scheduling challenges if it's combined with the bond measure. Alternatively, running a second measure in November of 2026 could confuse our voters. Delaying the bond will also increase project costs by 4.5% to 5.5% annually. After November 2026, state match funds will be based on lower current enrollment numbers, reducing funding. Additionally, if the bond does not pass, district leadership and the board of directors will need to discuss the potential closure of Spinning Elementary and Waller Road Elementary schools, like what happened with the closure of the library science building at Puyallup High School. So what can you do? As we approach the upcoming bond election, there are a few important steps you can take to support our community. The first, and you've heard it throughout this presentation, is register to vote if you're not already registered. And there's the website that you can go to, votewa.gov. Become knowledgeable, which you're becoming knowledgeable by attending this event, and we appreciate that. This is where you get facts and you hear about our building needs in Puyallup. Follow Foundations for Our Future on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We have a lot of social media out there about all the great work happening in Puyallup and, of course, information about this bond measure. And then if you could, please share information with your friends and posts that you see on social media. Share them with your network, and that just helps spread the word. And your involvement is crucial in making informed decisions and supporting our district's future. So now it's time for us to begin answering questions that we've received during the presentation. And so with that, I'm going to pass this portion of the agenda off to Sarah Gillespie, who again is our Executive Director of Communications, and she's going to facilitate the discussion. As a reminder, please continue submitting questions that you'd like for us to address in the chat.
Great, thank you, Vince. So I just wanted to reiterate that we do have a panel of subject matter experts with us tonight to address some of the questions. So we'll get things started. We're going to start with the order of questions in which some have been received in the chat here. So our first question zeroes in on the Puyallup High School's gymnasium. So Brady, I think I'm going to have you address this one in particular. The question is, does the bond address the safety concerns for closing the road in front of the Puyallup High School gym? If the bond passes, will the road in front of PHS be reopened after the construction is complete?
Yes, so the work around the site right now, the pilot project's in place with the road closure, and it's being studied of the impacts of closing that road. Obviously, we're looking at and paying attention to the safety and security of our students that cross that road 6 periods a day to get to and from the portables to the main building. The funding for that, after the pilot project, there'll be further discussions with the city of Puyallup of whether the road could remain closed or if there's additional work that's going to be needed to address the right of way, whether it be calming or additional sidewalk improvements and such. The bond does include off-site work as well. So in the bond, there will be additional requirements that those projects will trigger due to the amount of work that's going on, such as parking improvements, street lighting, landscaping, sidewalk enhancements, possibly signaling off the 7th and Pioneer, and some additional safety and safety improvements around the campus on the site.
Great, thank you, Brady. I know there's been some community concern there with regards to closing that road. I mean, first and foremost, our concern is making sure that students and staff are safe in that area while we continue to work in partnership with the city to monitor, the impact to traffic in the area as well. So, and if any of the panelists too, I wanted to remind everyone, if you had anything to add to the question or the answer, certainly feel free to do so before we move on. So. Okay, the next question here is, Brady, I think I'm going to have you answer this as well, because this really gets into the specifics on the ratings for the buildings. So this participant asks, there are a lot of buildings with low ratings. What protocols and procedures are being put in place by the district to ensure that building ratings don't get this low in the future? This is a really good discussion because I think a lot of our families and community, they really don't understand the whole concept behind those condition scores. So if you could kind of explain that, that would be great.
Yeah, good question. So yeah, with our district, our funding mechanism here in Capital is obviously a levy, and a levy is what allows us to go and complete life cycle improvement projects. So we track life cycle improvement projects based on the life expectancy of a system or a component of the building. So we call those predicted renewals. So things that you can relate to would be such like your roof on your home, or your water heater or your furnace in your house. Those all have a life expectancy, and we track those and put them on a list. And we also track observed deficiencies, which are those things that are between 0, like today, and 5 years out, or that are past their useful life as well. those get rated and are scored as most critical, and we put those into a levy package, which is what we put forth in front of the voters in February of 2024, and are very grateful for the community supporting that. And that was a $175 million capital levy that allows us to complete 906 life cycle improvement projects district-wide. Those are some of our most critical projects. We had over $400,000 or $400 million in identified needs in the district. And so this will cover a big portion of that, but there's still always ongoing needs. The state does not fund those life cycle improvement projects through the general fund. So the only way to fund big system replacements is through a capital levy. So over the years, when we don't get a levy passed, the maintenance on those things and these systems get deferred, and we do the best job we can with the funds that we have to keep our buildings going.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think that building condition score conversation really dovetails nicely into all of the ways in which the reports that were evaluated, the things that were looked at in developing the bond package. And so, Vince, I'm going to have you answer this next question. It really speaks to what was all considered in development of the bond proposal. So I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to the process, our bond advisory group, the work of our school capacity and utilization committee, all of those hours and those reports that were looked at and analyzed to come up with the proposal that we did.
Sure. Yeah. And I spoke a little bit about this earlier in the presentation, but as Sarah mentioned, there was a lot of work done prior to the most recent bond advisory committee that started meeting in September of 2024. And really, they concluded their work with their recommendation in November of 2024. And ultimately designed the package that was shared with you this evening, the bond package. But the reason that we were able to condense the timeline for this particular bond package to be developed is because of all the work that had been done prior to this most recent bond advisory committee commissioning. Meaning that there was several reports and studies done, the study and survey, as we talked about, this CFAC report that was discussed that really looked at the district as a whole and identified all of the needs. Because if you remember, there's $1.26 billion of need in the district. That's currently where we're at. We took all of that information, the highest need sites in our district. We took that information to this bond advisory committee that was commissioned, as I said, back in September. And we started to narrow it down because we knew, right, that we couldn't ask voters to consider a $1.26 billion package. And so we looked at all of those needs and we really focused in on the highest needs in the district. And I'll share with you an example of what I mean. So you see that Spinning Elementary is on this particular bond package. Well, Spinning Elementary has been part of the conversation of needing to be replaced for many years. And it has been considered as part of a bond package, but was never, in lack of better words, it never made the list, right? Of sites that really we needed to focus in on. And so we were at an open house at Spinning and talking about the bond as we are here this evening. And a community member came in and said, I remember when we were talking about Spinning years ago and the need to replace Spinning. And yet here we are again, right? Talking about Spinning. So when I say it's years of work and years of discussions, we know that, and we don't take for granted going out and asking voters to consider a bond package. And we know that we have to, be cautious about the timing and everything of that. And so here we are again with the highest need sites in the district going before the voters for them to consider, next week. And it's important to know that, like I said, that this is years and years of discussion that got us to the point where we are right now.
Yeah, I think that's a really good distinction there, Vince, is that we are technically always in bond planning mode, right? So the last time we passed a bond was in 2015, and we are continually reassessing those building needs. So this next question is, I'm going to present this to you, Dr. Palm. This individual is wanting to touch back on what you said initially, right when we began our presentation this evening. You made a reference to the state not supplying funding. So this seems like a state problem. This attendee says, what is being done to fix priorities? Can you speak a little bit to the legislature?
Yes, I guess I would maybe start with this is a capital fund project. So bonds build schools. We also have, as Brady mentioned, capital levies. And so those can also address the life cycle improvement needs in schools. Usually that's repair existing facilities. I did want to point out too that this is about schools, but our school district has to maintain a lot more buildings than that. We have 60 facilities within the school district, which is pretty significant. So we've got to find ways to use those capital dollars to deal with heating and roofs and all those things, and all these other buildings too, where people might work, but we don't necessarily have students. But with that, the larger process of how we fund schools in the state of Washington is that the state does provide us with funding for operations. It's driven to us based on enrollment, and we receive apportionment to run the district monthly. And with that, though, the state funds us at about 75% of actual costs. So that's why a district runs an EP&O levy, which is now called, in the old days we called those M&O levies. But the operations of the district is supplemented then by local funds, because the state does not fully fund utility costs, all kinds of fixed costs, insurance costs, labor costs, employee costs, all those things that come to us, and including our maintenance of facilities costs. And even our employees are funded at less than what a full-time employee costs. So we supplement all those things with our local EP&O levy. So that's one part of that tax base that we're talking about. The capital levy then that was supported, that pays for a lot of other items. But when it comes to actually building new schools, the state of Washington has affirmed that that's a local responsibility. And because we've tried to kind of litigate that through the years, or talk our legislature into changing that. Some people have sued. It's gone to the Supreme Court even in the state. So what that means is we have to run bonds. And so we run a bond. And then, as was mentioned by the other panelists, if we're successful with that bond, add a supermajority of 60%, then we can apply for school construction assistance dollars from the state of Washington. And those come to us, again, after we've already passed that bond, after we've already mostly completed a project, 90% complete, then we can apply for those dollars. And then they can be applied to the current projects if they end up costing more, which we haven't experienced. We've actually been really, really fortunate to have our costs come in below estimates. But it also covers other projects. So projects that didn't make the list but were heavily considered might be projects like Walker High School. They might be auxiliary gyms in facilities. They might be expansions of other facilities that we weren't able to put into this particular measure. And because the only options we have then, if we don't end up with bond dollars to do these projects, is we end up using our local funds to put in portables. So we lead well, I don't know if we lead the state for sure, but we are one of the leading districts with number of portables in our district. At last count, we were at 221 portables in the district, and that's just not right. So that's what we're trying to rectify, is really reduce the dependency on portables, which are temporary housing. And I know that we've probably on time on that question. I probably went over, but I just also wanted to mention that besides the elementary projects we talked about, which are rebuilding for a little bit larger student populations than they currently have, the high schools also currently experience significant portable use. And each of those comprehensive high schools are pretty large. We are approaching 1,800 kids actually in Rogers and in PHS in just 3 grades. We're in the mid 1600s up at ER, Emerald Ridge High School. And so we want to have all 3 of those high schools be able to house permanent student housing of 1,800. And that would just be where we are right now. We really need that space for the current students we have, including the projected enrollment growth we expect over the next decade.
Yeah, I think your answer has really set us up good to discuss next the questions that we're hearing a lot about enrollment. Enrollment is one of the driving factors in this bond proposal, responding to our current capacity issues and planning for future enrollment. So Ryan, I'm wondering if you can answer this question. So this participant asks or says, during the pandemic, there was a noticeable decline in student enrollment. Could you discuss how this decrease has impacted the district's current capacity challenges and whether the projections indicate that enrollment will soon rebound and surpass pre-pandemic numbers? So really just give us an update. Is that an accurate statement? Where were we at? Where are we at now?
So I can give you a little bit of context on pre-pandemic enrollment. We were averaging about 22,820 students pre-pandemic, and that is historically one of the highest enrollment numbers in Puyallup School District. I do want to note that not all of the students are counted in that number. So if you were to look at our enrollment numbers on PSD Insights, that number includes students that are in Running Start, Puyallup Open Doors, and some other programs that may not always be in our count that we include for funding. So I just wanted to make that distinction because it can kind of be confusing for people. But going back to the numbers that we do count, October 2019 was one of our highest years. Then we did see approximately 1,000 student decline during COVID. And then we have since gained approximately 600 students, still 400 students lower than 2019. Our projections over the next 10 years originally were about 1,000 student gain during that time. Those have been since reevaluated as we look at our current enrollment numbers. So we're conservative with our enrollment projections. Because we have to make sure that we are funded by the state appropriately to operate. We're expecting anywhere between 800 to 1,000 students in that time period, that gain.
Yeah, the next 10 years. I think that's really important to note that we are one of the few districts in the area that is continuing to grow with pockets of new construction and new homes being built. So this next question, Brady, I'm going to have you address this. We've heard this a lot, so if the bond passes, can you speak to the timeline of the bond projects? How are these projects prioritized? Do they happen all at once? What gets addressed first? Kind of what is our triaging process?
Good question. So with these bond projects, there's 7 projects, and as much as we would love to do all 7 right away, we're not able to do that. It'd strain our local workforce that we have and our contractors. So knowing the planning process takes roughly 2 years for design and permitting, and then it'll take an additional 18 to 24 months of construction. So it'll be 4 years before we see, the building complete and open and operational in the district. The order in which the projects will be completed is we're going to be evaluating that again, the cabinet members, and looking at all the metrics that have been looked at by our bond advisory committee and our school capacity utilization task force and those recommendations. and making sure that we do order the projects based on building condition and growth needs that we're seeing right now in our projections across the district. So that further information will come shortly, but the order has not been fully pinned down yet.
Okay, thanks, Brady. And since I have you online answering, I'm going to lob this next one over to you as well. We get this question with regards to student safety and really envisioning what a school campus looks like when there's active construction going on. So if the bond were to pass, and of course we're replacing those 3 elementary schools, what does construction look like on those sites when we're building, but we're still not wanting to be disruptive to school?
Yeah, so when we do new construction, the sites, when we look at the replacement elementary schools, obviously they'll be built on the green space, the grass field space of our existing sites while school's currently in session. So we'll have staff and students in the main building. They will experience a reduced grass playfield to play in, but it's a year for them to explore other activities at recess. The gymnasium would be used, but it's also a fun time for students to be able to peer through the fence and see the construction happening and ask questions from the recess duties that are out on the playground. So it's still fun, but it does change a bit. But that's part of the sacrifice that you have to make to get a new building. But it's really rewarding when you get to move into that new building and they end up opening a new school and they get a new playground and play yard to play in. So that's kind of what the process looks like there.
Yeah, talk about a great learning opportunity for students and staff. Nothing like having active construction going on and following directions. Okay, this next question, Vince, I'm going to have you address this. In lieu of Brian Devereaux not being here, he's kind of our district demographer, and he's directly involved with boundary planning and attendance boundary changes, that sort of thing. Can you speak to the new school in particular? So we bring a new school online. What then happens to our existing attendance boundaries?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have the district did a huge boundary review study with recommended changes several years ago. And what we committed to at that time was to continue just looking at our enrollment. And that kind of morphed into what we call the School Capacity Utilization Task Force. And that particular task force is chartered with just looking at enrollment in the district, looking at particular areas or sites within our district school sites that have congestion or low enrollment or whatever the case may be. And they're a body that recommends potential programmatic changes from one school to another, or looking at, do we need to consider any type of a boundary adjustment to alleviate congestion at one particular site or sites within the district? In the case of a new elementary school, we would be looking at, of course, the neighboring schools that encompass that particular new elementary. So when we think about the location of where that new elementary is going to go up on the South Hill area there by Glacier View and Emerald Ridge, well, of course, that will impact Edgerton Elementary. It'll impact Hope Elementary, Hunt Elementary, possibly Ridgecrest. And that's where we see, of course, the growth in the district. And we know if any of the participant or any of the attendees this evening have a child that go to any one of those schools, they'll know that those schools right now are pretty much at capacity with the exception of maybe one. But so they see that from, they see the high enrollment at those sites. So we'll work closely with those communities. We'll work closely with those schools. Certainly the School Capacity Utilization Task Force will have a part in that to some degree. But that's something that obviously will need to be done, but there's involvement from many stakeholders, including the community at large, and ultimately what that looks like and certainly communication is key in that whole process. So it's a collaborative effort that involves those that are impacted and the schools that they encompass. So.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I think Dr. Palm, you might want to comment as well. It's just another opportunity for us to work with our community, that this process and these decisions are not done in a silo. So go ahead, Dr. Palm.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that, I guess, a little bit. One is we have been pretty diligent and intentional about engaging with community groups, not just around construction and school planning, but in other areas of the district as well. We have other committees where we have folks engaging and giving us feedback. So I think we're definitely committed to that community engagement element long term. And then I also wanted to note, even though it's not a completely new school, but the Mountain View project, and the reason I think it made the short list this time was because of the growth in Edgewood and the fact that Northwood Elementary opened up just 2019 and is already over capacity, planned to be over capacity for next year. We've already got portables still there at that site, which I think normally when you do a brand new building, you wouldn't necessarily put portables there, but we were squeezed because Northwood is, or excuse me, but Mountain View is so small. And so by rebuilding there a larger school, then there would be a boundary adjustment need that could take place that would move students who are currently in the Northwood boundary area into the Mountain View area to relieve that. And I think just long term, anytime you do planning like this, of course, conditions can change. Zoning can change and things like that. But we believe that these projects would set us up as a district to have ample space for our students for at least the next 10 years.
Good. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned something about the North Hill area because that is high growth, a lot of movement going on in that area of the district. So looking at the time, we've addressed a lot of the questions here. Will a video of today's Q&A and Tuesdays be available? Yes, we're going to post the recordings on our YouTube channel and on our website. So, so with that, I will turn things back over to you, Vince.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so if you have additional thoughts or feedback you would like to share with us, please use the QR code presented on this slide. And again, just thank you for attending and actively engaging in tonight's discussion. We always value your time and truly appreciate your commitment to learning more about the issues that our districts face. As we conclude, we want to emphasize the importance of your participation in shaping our community's future by casting your vote. Remember, February 11th, it's just next week. So please continue to stay informed and connected as we approach the election. And I can't reiterate your involvement's invaluable at ensuring the best possible outcome for our schools and students. Just want to thank our panelists for their insights and expertise. And again, thank you all for attending. And I'm going to say it one more time. Remember, make your voice heard by casting your ballot no later than 8 p.m. on February 11th.
And encourage your friends to do so too.
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.